dia! Ou, no caso da nossa convidada, Xia, boa noite. Bem-vindos, então, à quarta conversa do Festival Relampeio. Bom dia! Num sábado de manhã. Muito obrigada a todo mundo que está aqui. Hoje a gente vai, então, começar o dia conversando com uma autora chinesa, que é a Xia Jia, e vamos ter os mediadores Nikelen Witter, Nikelen Witter e André Cáceres. E eu já vou apresentar todo mundo, mas antes de eu apresentar todo mundo, a gente vai falar um pouquinho de um projeto que foi escolhido para a gente promover no dia de hoje, que é o projeto Sobrevivendo ao Corona. Né? O Relampeio tem essa proposta, então, de a gente tentar, além de conversar e celebrar a literatura, também tentar fazer alguma coisa por pessoas que estão passando por situações muito difíceis, né, devido à atual conjuntura que o coronavírus criou e que nossos supostos responsáveis políticos fazem questão de agravar. Então, o projeto Sobrevivendo ao Corona é de São Paulo e ele surgiu no início da pandemia e do isolamento social como uma resposta às necessidades de sobrevivência e de subsistência da periferia. Ele é formado por um grupo de pessoas que, quando viram, perceberam as necessidades das famílias em situação de vulnerabilidade, se uniu e está tentando ajudar quem passa fome nesse momento. Então, eles mapearam famílias e estão tentando levar mantimentos para famílias, né, que estão em situação de necessidade. Já foram atendidas mais de 1.000 famílias pelo projeto, mas ainda tem mais 4.000 famílias na lista de espera. Então, eles aceitam doação pelo PicPay, eles aceitam transferência bancária, tem Nubank, tem Banco do Brasil, e você pode encontrar todos os dados disso no nosso link de social, www.relampeio.com.br/social, para fazer uma doação, seja ela por PayPal, seja ela por PicPay, por transferência, para então tentar ajudar, né, dar uma força para esse projeto tão incrível e tão importante nesse momento. Bom, vou então apresentar primeiro os nossos mediadores incríveis, que vão fazer as perguntas, que vão conduzir essa conversa. A Nikelen é uma escritora, historiadora e professora universitária. Ela escreveu Viajantes do Abismo, 17 Mortos e Territórios Invisíveis, e também é coautora de Guanabara Real e de Alcova da Morte, que foi vencedor dos prêmios Leblanc e AGs de melhor romance. O André, que é o nosso outro mediador, é escritor e jornalista. Ele é autor de Cela 108 e coautor de Corações de Asfalto. Ele também tem contos em publicações literárias e o André escreve sobre literatura para o jornal O Estado de São Paulo. E a nossa incrível convidada de hoje, diretamente da China, é a Xia Jia. Ela é uma professora de literatura chinesa e ela também é professora convidada na Universidade da Califórnia. Ela tem uma coleção de discussões acadêmicas contemporâneas sobre a ficção científica chinesa e que foi publicada no ano passado, em 2019, que chama Coordinates of the Future, Discussions on Chinese Science Fiction in the Age of Globalization. Ela também publica muitos contos e ficção especulativa desde a época da universidade, e ela já teve 7 histórias vencedoras do Galaxy Award, que é o prêmio de ficção científica mais prestigioso da China. Ela já publicou um romance de fantasia chamado Odyssey of China Fantasy on the Road e 3 coleções de ficção científica, The Demon Enslaving Flask, A Time Beyond Your Reach, and Shan City is Falling Down. Recentemente, ela está trabalhando também em uma enciclopédia, né, de ficção científica. Ela também tem muitos contos publicados em inglês, traduzidos na Clarkesworld, e uma coleção de contos também traduzidos chamado Spring Festival, que você pode encontrar lá na Amazon. E ela tem uma coleção agora de contos da antologia para sair, chamado A Summer Beyond Your Reach, Stories, que vai sair ainda esse ano, pelo que eu tenho aqui. Além de tudo isso, ela ainda escreve sobre ficção científica em pesquisa acadêmica, faz tradução, escreve roteiros, edita e ensina escrita criativa. Que currículo! Então agora eu vou passar para o inglês e vou deixar os nossos convidados se apresentarem um pouquinho e logo a gente vai seguir para perguntas. So, switching to English now, and Nikelen and André, if you want to, introduce yourselves a little bit, and then Xia can introduce herself in English, and we can go on with the question.
Who go first?
Okay, começa? You can go first then. Nikelen?
Não tinha te ouvido. Desculpa. Bom, você já apresentou, né? Eu queria inicialmente agradecer o convite do festival. É maravilhoso estar participando de toda essa iniciativa, né? E de ter contato com tantos autores maravilhosos, né, ao redor do mundo. Como a Xia Jia, é muito legal poder conversar, trocar e ouvir e aprender com pessoas que estão um pouco na mesma vibração, né? De escrever ficção científica, ficção fantástica, mas também pensar sobre ela como algo dentro do nosso mundo e capaz de causar, modificar, criar, crescer, né, nesse momento em que a gente vive. É um grande prazer estar aqui.
Right. André, you wanna introduce yourself?
Sure. First, I'd like to thank you so much for this invitation, and it's such a pleasure to be able to participate in something like this, and to be able to help people a little bit and to talk about literature and science fiction. And as you already said, my name is André Cáceres. I am a journalist and writer of science fiction, and normally I write about science fiction too, so it's going to be such a nice conversation here. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all, and nice to meet all of the invisible audience online. So it's my great honor to have this online meeting in this special period of time, in this period of pandemic, to talk with people from other languages, countries, and as I just grasped some of the words by Kali, so sounds like she already mentioned most of my works. So one thing to add is that actually in the past year I was in the US as a visiting scholar, and just last month I was very lucky to take the special flights arranged by the Chinese consulate to come back to China, and right now I'm still in the quarantine at home, but still it's very good to finally to got home after a long odyssey travel, so come back to home to meet my family again. So I think that's basically what I want to say. So very lucky to meet you, all of you here. Hi.
We have some people in the comments here saying that they really, really like your work and that you should come to Brazil. All right. Nikelen, would you like to start with your question?
Yes. Well, my first question, Português. Bom, eu tenho uma percepção a respeito de que as bases, uma das bases da ficção científica é também uma investigação literária da moral e dos valores humanos frente aos avanços tecnológicos.
Isso, para mim, aparece desde Frankenstein de Mary Shelley até coisas modernas, como a série Black Mirror da Netflix. A minha pergunta é: em que sentidos você acredita que a ficção científica ela pode ser também um espaço de uma filosofia especulativa sobre os nossos limites éticos, tanto no presente quanto no futuro, enquanto humanidade?
So, in Nikelen's perception, one of the foundations of science fiction is that it's a literary investigation of the moral and of the human values when confronted with the advances in technology. She sees that, like, from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein up to Netflix's Black Mirror. And her question is, in what ways do you believe that sci-fi can also be a space for speculative philosophy about, the ethical limits, both in present and in the future?
Okay, thanks for the question. Actually, because I already seen the script for this interview, and there needs to be like an order of the questions. It starts from endless question and then Nikelen's. But I think the first two questions that's related to each other closely. So I prepared for these questions in my original order. But I think it should be better to just follow my order because there's like the logic behind these two questions. So, but I just so both two questions. It's about like the limitation and the possibility of science fiction in the past and right now and in the future. So first, I want to say these are very big questions, and I want to answer the question from a very simple story. And the story is a very classical science fiction story. I think most of the science fiction readers already know it well. The title of the story is The Cold Equations, which is published in 1954 by American science fiction writer Tom Godwin. I will just describe this story very briefly. The story happened in a future in like a space time, and happens in a small emergency dispatch ship. And the main characters are two people. One is a pilot, and another one is a 18 years young beautiful girl, and she is like a stowaway. She sneaked into the pilot, and she wanted to take the pilot to go to the frontier planet to see her brother. But there is a law that all of the dispatch ship, if anyone on the ship, they found a stowaway, they must throw the stowaway outside of the ship because the ship do not allow to take extra fuel. And if the pilot, he just be nice to let the girl stay in the ship, and during the landing process of the ship will just use up the fuel earlier, and it would just fall on the planet and destroy it. And all of the people, the pilot, the girl, and all of this, how to say, the explorers on that planet, including the girl's brother, will just die. So that's a basic story. So at the end of story, during the process, the pilot just tried to persuade the girl that you should die, you must die. That's the only way we can save all of the other people. And by the end of the story, the girl just accepted all of this logic, and she just believed the logic, and she just went into a lock room and to be thrown away outside the ship and to go to die violently. So that's a very sad story. And I want to mention the story because I think this short one is very classical also very arguable story can be regarded as like as a meta science fiction of like the basic original paradigm of all of the science fiction even today. Because one thing is that the story just reveals to us a very horrible fact that our human civilization is a iron cage, is a killing machine. It's always killing people. It has been killing, is killing, and will kill more people. And this killing machine, this iron cage, is constituted by all of these code equations, all of these visible and invisible rules. So in the story, you can see there is a visible rules. It said clear that there's a law. The law is called that the unauthorized personnel keep out. They should not get into the ship. And the reason the girl must die because uh, she just broke the rule. So that's what she deserved because of this. But there are also there are invisible rules, invisible code equations. If we analyze this story, we will find that the very cold truth behind the whole story is that we must conquer those frontier planets to develop our civilization. That's the only way our civilization, human civilization, could survive, could develop. So we have to send all of these ships, these explorers, this stuff to the faraway planets, and we have to save money during this process. So that's a reason why we cannot take some extra fuel in the ship because that should be very very expensive. So in this all of this based on all of this logic, there's a there so there is only there will be the only choice that we have to keep the whole human civilization develop at all costs, to sacrifice many lives of human beings. So that's a basic logic, the code equations behind this story, behind most of the science fiction stories. And such story, actually, most of the readers really criticize, really recognize that this story should be arguable, should be put questions to. And on the other level is that we will find that this very special science fiction story itself also became part of this iron cage, this killing machine, because all of the readers of the story they got educated, they got persuaded by the narrator, and they finally believe that there's no other choice except for the very cool choice to kill the girl. So just as the same process of the girl got educated by the pilot. So it's like a dual process. Just the readers, the readers of the stories, they are rationalized by the logic behind the story. So I think this problematic situation just continues in most of the science fiction story today. On one hand, it reveals it's in most of the stories, science fiction stories, we can tell the horror story, the horror behind all of these stories that the modern society, the human civilization, or in other words, the capitalist world system, it's always a killing machine. It's iron cage, and we still can find no way to go outside of this iron cage. And on the other hand, all of the stories, they always tend to rationalize all of these code equations, especially the invisible ones, to make the readers believe that the solutions provided by the stories, by the readers, should be the only choices or the best choices, and we cannot to think about other choices. So I think that this is both like the problem and also like the limitation of science fiction stories today, especially in this very dramatic and very tragic period of time today. So, so that's my answer actually to the second question. But next, I think Angela, you can give your question, and then I will go. I will just follow up this logic to move to my second answer. Sorry to make it complicated.
Don't worry. Don't worry. So I think you were answering Andre's question, and we switched the order. Okay. So Andre is going to ask his question now, so that the public knows what we're talking about, and then we can go on.
My first question, which was already answered, was because our world looks like a sci-fi piece nowadays, and it's getting kind of difficult to trace the limits where the science fiction ends and where the reality begins. And in this kind of world, what are the limits and the limitations of the genre of science fiction in general? That was the question that was already answered, just to explain to the public. And I believe now Xia Jia is going to answer Nikelen's question, right?
I think Nicolas' question is more about like the space of the possibility of science fiction, right? How to, for example, to get away of this iron cage. And it actually just based on like the questions we give to, for example, the ethical limits, the how to say, yes, the human values, how the human values will uh, have been and will change during the process of technology development. And I want to answer this question uh, by sharing another short story, another one which I just love for many years. So this story is also a very, very, very classic and old one, a short story. The title is "The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas," which is written by my favorite American science fiction writer Ursula Le Guin, which was published in 1973. So that story is actually more like a fantasy story, not like a proper science fiction. But the story just describe a very beautiful, unimaginable, beautiful, happy, utopian city. Its name is Omelas. So all the people live in Omelas. They just live a very, very happy life. But there's only one horror thing exists in this city, is that the whole the prosperity of the whole city just depends on the mystery of a single child in this city. So the basic rule of this city is that no one in this city can help that kid, can say any good words to that kid, no one can just express their empathy to the kid. If they do such thing, the prosperity of the happiness, the magic of the city will just disappear, and all of the people in the city will live a very mystical, a very, very bad lives.
I believe we lost
Acho que ela
Xia.
travou um pouco. Gente, acho que a Xia travou um pouquinho.
Author also tell us, sorry, yeah. So in this story, the author, the narrator also tells us that this logic, this code rule cannot be break, and every people in the city, even though they feel very, very sad, feel very sorry for that poor kid, but they just finally became to success the equations arose. But at the end of story, the author also tell us there's one strange thing happens in the city, very unreasonable thing happens that in the city, there are seldom some of the people, they just mystical, mystically choose to walk away from the city. And so the end of story, tells us that these people, they live ominous. They walk ahead into the darkness, and they do not come back. The place they go towards is a place even less imaginable to most of us than the city of happiness. But they seem to know where they are going, the ones who walk away from ominous. So I think it is very, very provoking ending of this story, and it gives an answer to the question provided by stories like the code equations. The answer is came from Lagoon, and actually it's not an answer. Still a question that where to go, and is there any place else outside ominous? But there's like the attitude that we should try to walk away and try to find something somewhere else. So I think the real challenge is how to imagine that unimaginable place other than ominous. And the ominous in other names is actually our human civilization. It's the iron cage. It's that killing machine. It's the capitalist world system, which we just get used, and we think there's like the very reasonable being from the beginning of the world till the end of the world. Uh, but so I think such topic that what else or how to imagine the alternatives. Such topic have been deeply explored in the most provoking science fiction works in the past centuries. And such works, they are not like very like lonely stories told by lonely authors, but such stories they were they were part of the greater trends of the revolutionary thoughts and practice during the past centuries. So I believe that as long as the trends, this revolutionary trends go on, such exploration of science fiction will never stop. So recently, I just finished. I read a book. It's a academic book on science fiction studies, and the title is very interesting. The title is Science Fiction and Critical Theory. It's by a American scholar named Carl Friedman. So his basic idea in this book is that science fiction is critical theory. Science fiction itself is critical theory because the main reason provided by the author is that he thinks that science fiction, or how to say, he thinks that what is real is always historicized in most of the science fiction stories, which makes science fiction be a very useful tool of critical theory, or in other words, the very spirit of science fiction itself should be critical theory. So if a science fiction is if a science fiction story itself is not that critical theory, it's not a good science fiction. So that's a like a basic idea by Carl Friedman. And I think which so such explanation, such elaboration of what science fiction is, or what science fiction should be, give us very good ways, approaches to think about uh, how we should keep on writing real science fiction stories now and in the future. So on the one hand, science fiction is always like rationalize something, some code equations. But on the other hand, there's also always some opportunity to critical size those code equations in science fiction stories. So like it's like the double sides of like the sword, or the double sides of the science fiction. Yeah. So that's my answer to the Nicholas question. So let's keep on going.
Yeah. I'm just going
So
to.
do you have any comment or yeah?
I'm just going to tell our audience, because this story by Le Guin that you mentioned, it came out for free, and it's online. So I'm just going to tell our audience that in Portuguese. Gente, só para comentar que essa história, aqueles que deixam elas, foi traduzida pela Mão Branco, saiu, tá de graça no projeto Cápsula para quem quiser ler. Foi uma tradução da esse Regina Candiani, isso foi uma informação que a Jana passou aí. E acho que vale muito a pena ler, porque é uma história incrível, incrível, como a Xia já descreveu aqui. Mas vale muito a pena ler, então super
E
recomendo.
como todas as histórias da Le Guin, né? Igualmente, porque ela é um espetáculo maravilhosa.
Né? So Nikelen just commented that this story is amazing, just as anything written by Le Guin, because her stories are amazing. But and then Nikelen, do you want to comment?
Um comentário. Me parece que as duas histórias que a tia usou para responder o André e a mim, elas nos colocam, pelo menos essa é a minha leitura, eu acho que é um ponto que agora tem sido muito caro para mim, que é as nossas respostas aos problemas do mundo serem de forma individual ou coletiva. E me parece que a literatura mainstream acaba muitas vezes fixando na resposta individual. E talvez o grande diferencial da ficção científica é que ela nos coloca num ponto em que as nossas respostas individuais importam menos que as nossas respostas enquanto espécie, enquanto grupo, enquanto coletivo. Eu fiquei com essa impressão sobre as duas falas e as duas histórias que a tia nos trouxe, assim, né? Que isso me marcou, mas talvez seja uma percepção muito pessoal no meu momento.
So Nikelen said that for her, these two stories touched something that is something very dear for her at this time, which is the difference between the reactions, the ways we can react to the status quo, and how it can be very different, when we have an individual reaction from when we have a collective reaction, group reaction. And that she feels that maybe what makes science fiction so different in this case is that it puts our individual reactions in a place in which they matter less, in a place in which our collective reactions, are the ones which can operate change the most. And said that it might be something personal, her interpretation of putting these two stories together, because it's something that is very important to her right now. But that she the juxtaposition of these two stories kind of brought this to her.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for a comment.
I agree with Nikelen, and I'd say that this happens maybe because in the mainstream literature, the largest stories we may think of are like the Odyssey and Iliad, the epics of the ancient times, which don't spend for too much time. Or, for example, War and Peace from Tolstoy, which is a big story with lots of characters, but it it's actually small if you compare to fantasy stories or space operas, or maybe 100 Years of Solitude from Garcia Marquez, which always also is like a giant story, but small compared to the scope of fantasy and science fiction. So maybe this choice of the roman, of the novel, to fixate in one character. Normally the story of the literature shows us that the novel is always looking at the inside, the psychology of one person in each book. Maybe that shows because why the mainstream literature would focus on individual choices, and science fiction, fantasy try to expand this and look in the whole picture, the big picture. It's a personal perspective, but I'd say it may be related to that thing. That's my comment.
Yes, thank you.
I think we can go on, but this time I'm going to ask you, Xia, which question should we ask first?
Just in the original order, it'll be fine. Let me see.
So I
I think
think Andres
it's
will
sure
come
from
first.
Andres, yeah, right?
All right. All right. So,
Angela, sorry, Angela, right? Angela.
your
Angela
question.
Cáceres, right?
Yeah, it's a little hard to pronounce, so don't worry about this. Um, so your those two stories you've used to explain your answers, I think they have something in common with one of the short stories I've read from you, which is the TikTok one, the story about the dreams and the people who work in the dreams. Uh, and this story, which is great, I really love their stories when I read them. This story has a very dark vision of society and how it works and how uh, it's a killing machine, as you've showed us in your answers. And it shows that maybe our dreams are like killing machine versions inside our heads. So science fiction is never trying to predict anything, but it normally anticipates the worst things that happen to our world. We don't anticipate the vaccine for something, but we anticipate the diseases. And this situation in which the world is nowadays, lots and lots of books have already been pointed out as, oh, that book has predicted coronavirus, that book has predicted, and it's always the bad things that gets predicted by science
Yeah,
fiction.
but good to the author. Their book would just sell well because of this like a prediction.
Yeah.
Joking, sorry.
but
Go on.
but just to finish this, this shows that science fiction tends to be pessimistic. But is there an optimistic way to write science fiction, in your opinion?
And sorry, just because your image was just a bit stuck, so I didn't hear clear the title you mentioned of my story. What's that story?
It's the TikTok, at least
Oh, yes. It's a
the
very Black Mirror
translation.
style, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that, but I don't know. Maybe sometimes writers don't like to be compared to other things, but it's totally Black Mirror, that story.
I don't care because the truth is that so first of all about that story, the truth is that in recent years I prefer to not to intentionally to write like dystopia stories, especially like the Black Mirror ways of dystopia stories that how the individuals have no other choice but to just to live a very pathetic life in this modern society or near future society. I think that's became like a how to say convention of science fiction writing. So in this sense, TikTok is very special one because it used to be a contribution to a science fiction writing competition. And I have a strong feeling that in this way, it's the best way for me to win that competition. And so I choose that Black Mirror style to finish that story. And it has been proven that strategy just works. I won that competition because of that story. But and many people told me that they really love that story. But I still want to say that this is not a very normal strategy of my science fiction writing in recent years. It's just a very how to say very very tricky tricky way to just win the competition. So back to your question. I think that's a another very paradoxical question is that how we should define what kind of science fiction is like a pessimistic or optimistic mystic. For example, I want to give another example, science fiction story, but it's not a written story, but a film. I believe most of the audience already know this film very well. It's a Snowpiercer, right? A Snowpiercer.
Yeah,
Did I
right.
pronounce it right? Because
Yeah.
mostly I just saw like a Chinese translation and the Korean title. So that's a Korean directed by a Korean director, released in 2013. And basically, in that story, the settings is that all survived human being of this world, they live in a very in a never stop train, and with a dramatically hierarchy. And what is tricky is the end of the story, because if you remember, that was a very arguable ending. Many people dislike this ending. They disprove the solution of the ending, because at the end of the story we see that there are some rebels. They try to challenge the ruler of this train world, of that train. And the ruler also had persuaded the rebels that the train must keep on running at all costs. For example, we should sacrifice the poor people. We should just let this hierarchy keeps on, and we should sacrifice those little kids to send them to do those horrible, harmful works. So that is all of the expenses we should sacrifice to keep the train running and to keep all of the people in the train to survive. So very similar, very same logic to as the logic I mentioned in the previous two stories. But if you remember that at the end, there's a one of the rebels, the Korean man. The Korean man, he refused the proposal of the ruler, and he decided to explode a big hole on the wall to get outside. And then what happened next is that the whole train was then derailed and destroyed because of the explosion. So basically, in the end, we can see there's a very sad story that most of the human beings in this train, they just die. And there's only, I think, two of the people, one young girl and another is I can't remember, but it must be a colored people, not a white people. Two colored people survive in the end. And it's very hard to tell whether or not the outside world is good enough for these two people to survive and to continue our so-called human civilization. So I think this ending used to be very controversial. You can hardly say that it's a happy ending, but on the other hand, is that a sad ending? Is that a pessimistic ending? So that's my question. If we agree with the logic, with the code equations provided by the ruler that the train should keep on moving, then we will just agree with that. This is a very bad ending. This is a sad ending, the end of the human being. But yeah, on that in that case, shall we say that staying in that tree should be the good ending, should be like an optimistic ending? It cannot be a very, very easy answer, a very easy choice from these two endings. So, right now, especially in this pandemic spread, worldwide spread, it became more it was very, there's a famous saying that it is easier to imagine the end to the world than the end to capitalism, which is which is a very famous saying attributed to both Frederick Jameson and Sylvia G. Zizek. And I think right now it's very, very true to compare, to think about what comes first, the end of the world or the end of the capitalism. Or can we imagine a world still survive or develop in the other way after the end of the capitalism? And so in this way, I think what the real hope which should provided by the best science fiction should not be a very easy solace, should not be like a happy solution that we should choose that easier choice. We should just follow all of these code equations and let the system just keep on moving. But the real hope comes from the practice of exploding a door to get away from the iron cage, from the killing machine, to explode a door from where the war it is. So I think that's a very tricky function of science fiction stories right now. So that might be or might not be the answer to your question. But I think the real question is just provided, it's just to us that what's a real hope? What is a real disaster? Sometimes we have to like reverse the common sense of what is happy ending and what is bad ending. So that's, I think, that's it.
Thank you.
Right?
So do you agree? Do you like the ending of the movie?
Yes,
What's your attitude? What's your like feedback of that, of the solution or the ending of that, or the question posed by that movie or by the movie director?
I believe it's from Bong Joon-ho, the same direction from the same director from Parasite. So I believe this
Yes.
question of class in his films is very strong, and I believe that every film he has directed has is a standalone movie, but it also can be seen inside his career, and I think he's always showing us how the collective action is better and at least has more effect than the individual ones, because in past movies he shows other kinds. Some are fantastic or science fictional and some of them are not, but he shows us how when the poorest people of society don't work together, they end up being one against each other, like in Parasite. And when they work together, they can work out a solution, even if it's not for better, but they can do something that is more effective. So I like the ending of this movie because tells a lot about other movies he has, and it's a very open ending. As you said, we cannot know if they can survive outside, but if it's not guaranteed that they cannot survive. So maybe they go outside and there will be a community of people, of survivors that they never heard of. So it has this hope, at least. I like this ending, this kind of ending, in the movie and in his whole career.
Yes, yes. And I think what is important to that movie is such ending is just totally out of the conventional endings of all of the Hollywood movies, Hollywood science fiction movies. It would be impossible to appear in a normal or in like a very, how to say, the commercial science fiction movie from Hollywood. Because most of the Hollywood movie just tell you that the bad guys. Actually, what is funny is that if you watch closely to for example, the Marvel movies, you will find that the bad guy, they are real people. They are people who have this courage to brought in some real change. They really want to change this unreasonable world. But the good guys, the heroes, they are the gatekeepers to fight against the bad guys, and like they are the ones who keep the running of this Snowpiercer, this train, this machine. So in the Korean, the Song House movie, you can see this is the reverse of the conventional solution. So that is very important for us to think it's reversely. Yeah.
We have some people here in the comment section saying that they liked the ending of the movie and that they found it very coherent. and also, Barbara Moraes said here that they tried to make a different cut when the movie when it was going to the movie theaters, but the director didn't let them, and so there was there was a clash of interest there that was so clear that they wanted to make something different, right, with the movie and cut it in a different way so that maybe these matters, these issues wouldn't appear so much.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to add is that I think it's also very important. It's also the very importance of reading science fiction from other languages, from other cultures, not just from like the mainstream science fiction community of, for example, the golden age science fiction from America, because most of the story just follow the conventional solutions. But if we read stories from other cultures, maybe they should not, even though they didn't provide you any real solution of the current of the status quo, but they still give you some alternative visions to see the picture, to reverse the map of the world, to have an alternative vision, to see that what is inside actually can be seen from outside, and what is outside actually is just a circled inside. So I think that's very important also. Yeah, and also that's why we just here discuss about science fiction from different languages. So shall we go on?
I think so, Nikelen.
Yes. Well, minha última questão é, de fato, uma questão curta, né? Até porque eu acho que tem muitas questões no chat que estão muito interessantes e elas vão abrir, né? E a gente tem um tempo limitado, infelizmente. Bom, a gente tem notado nos últimos tempos Vamos lá, a gente está vivendo um momento de ouro no interesse pela ficção científica e pela ficção especulativa, talvez em função do próprio momento que a gente está vivendo. e as pessoas, os leitores, em especial, eles têm retornado, né, a alguns livros bastante clássicos, inclusive porque vem nesses autores, nesses livros, como que uma previsão dos horrores que a gente está vivendo hoje, no momento atual, né? E aí nós temos fortemente, né, um gosto pelas distopias que tem, né, que a gente pensa que vai diminuir, mas continua crescendo. Então, a minha pergunta, né, que é uma pergunta curta, apesar da introdução, seria como uma autora de ficção científica, alguém que pesquisa isso, que dá aula de literatura, mas que também passou por ciências mais duras, né? Eu li que você estudou física. Quanto tempo você acha que nós precisaríamos viajar para o futuro para pensar numa sociedade utópica e não distópica?
Right. So before she asked the question, Kelly actually said that she's sorry that we don't have like unlimited time for this. So what she said is that lately we've been turning to science fiction classics, right, and science fiction written in the past, either to say that the authors predicted something, or to see if they could foresee any more horrors than the ones we are currently living. And so this generates a taste for the dystopian, right? And this taste points, right, to immediate futures which are bad, which are full of anguish and more horror. So what she wants to know is, as a science fiction writer, how long into the future do you think we have to like travel so that we can think of utopias, right? Happy societies, harmonic human societies, instead of dystopias, which seem to be the way people are going right now.
So as a science fiction writer, but also as a very practical person, I do not believe in, for example, escaping in the far future to live a happy life forever. And I also do not believe to, for example, escape into the past to live a better past, to live a happy life. So basically, I think that there's no easy answer for example, utopia. Utopia is not easy answer. Utopia is not a promise. Utopia is not like a promise that if we do this and do that, if we just follow the schedule, a perfect schedule, the happiness, the perfect world will arrive in the future, in for example 50 years later, or 100 years later, or even a million years later. So I do not believe in this kind of thing. But for me, I think utopia is a desire. It's a desire to get away, to search for alternatives. Always try to find alternatives. If we found some like a solution to this problem, there'll be other problem, and we have always to be ready to face the real harness of. For example, to finding a way to get out of this iron cage. So as a writer myself, as I just mentioned, that in recent years I mostly work on not that dystopia stories, but also not that utopia story. It's a very unique way. So what I'm doing in recent years is that I'm working on a fix-up novel entitled Chinese Encyclopedia. So it's basically a series of short stories shared the same settings, and all of stories just happen in the near future China, very, very near. Actually, feels like, for example, 5 years or even 10 years later. And what is tricky that some stories I finished 5 years ago right now seems not that science fiction and became more real now. And one thing I want to mention is that the title Chinese Encyclopedia, not not just implies the background, the settings of this story, not just implies that this story is just a story is in China, but also it has a double meaning. It has like a hidden meaning implication related to. I think many people have heard of that, the Chinese encyclopedia, the story which was written by Borges, and then later which was cited by Foucault to tell about, for example, the difficulty of understand a totally different set of sounds. So basically the story, not the story, the concept of the Chinese encyclopedia from Borges is that it's from the essay by him, and the essay introduced a fictional, totally fictional Chinese encyclopedia, and in that encyclopedia, for example, the entries of animals are divided into very nonsense categories. For example, A, belonging to the emperor; B, embalmed; C, tame; D, sucking pigs; E, sirens; F, fabulous, etc. This kind of things. So I think it's very important to for my story, my target of writing all of these stories is to provide my readers, to provoke my readers, to inspire my readers to think about the otherness, the alternatives, the real alien thing, the real alien ways of thinking the world, the real alien visions of seeing the world. So, but which is really a very challenging task for me. So that's partly it's partly the reason why I haven't finished it yet. It should be like for example, 12 stories, and then I just finished like 8 of them. And the TikTok, the story I just mentioned, it's basically very similar to these stories by the settings, but not by the attitudes, the solution of the story. So the TikTok is like a exception of the Chinese encyclopedia. It's not a real part of it. And yeah, sometimes when I introduce my stories, I like to use the term that
acho que tivemos uma nova travadinha, mas creio que logo ela
these
volta.
stories are kind of like a Chinese version. The real Chinese encyclopedia should be like more bright, not more bright, but more provoking, to give some real challenge, real question to my readers. So that is what I'm trying to do. And I think for doing this, it's not it should not like to, for example, to depend on how far away or how near the future you explore. But actually, most of the time, I think what is important is that how you really explore in the past, in the history, because there used to be real differences, real alternatives happened in the past, in the history. But such alternatives used to be like erased by the mainstream narration, erased by most of, for example, bad science fiction stories. This kind of story just tell you there's only one single story of the history from the beginning of the end, and we can only follow the logic of this single story. But what had happened in the past, in the history, there used to be different kinds of practice, different kinds of revolutionary solutions. So if we explore a lot of, if we explore this kind of history, really histories, it should be like a multiple history. If we really try to explore this kind of history, it's really hard. Then we might come up with some like solutions for the future. So that's what I believe in. Yeah. The end of
Thank
my
you.
answer.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, really, people here are commenting and really, really saying that they're learning a lot and saying that they're, loving this, loving hearing you. So we have some questions from the audience, and so I'm going to start. We actually have 5 questions here. I think at least one of them might have been answered already, but that's fine. So the first one by Paulo Vinicius dos Santos. He wants to know if science fiction is still a genre that predicts future things, or is it more of an extrapolation of recent problems?
Yeah, sorry, it's a bit. Hi.
Hi. Hello? Can you?
It's a bit stuck again, but I think it goes well, right? Right
Of
now,
course.
yeah.
Is it stable now?
Hello, yeah. Because
Hi.
from my screen, some of the like image is just stopped, so I do not know whether the connection goes well. But actually, I think that I already talked a lot about this kind of like a future prediction of science fiction, and I'm really curious about like the thoughts and reaction from the two interviewers. So, what's your thought about that question?
So Nikelen and that.
I really enjoyed your answer here, and there's a saying. It's not actually a saying, but a thought that utopia is in Portuguese is a utopia. Eu is I, is me in Portuguese. So utopia is always the me, the thing that you think it would be perfect, but what would be perfect for me is not perfect for anyone else. So always there's an utopian book. It's so nice to read those books because you say, whoa, that would be hell for me because it's the perfect word for that person, but it wouldn't work for me. And it's impossible to congregate all the worldviews in a single word. If we had to live in utopias, each person would have to live in its own utopia, in its own utopia. So and even if you live in your utopia, the boredom is the worst thing ever for humanity. Like we can adapt to deserts and to ice and to hot weather. We can adapt to space. Our species can adapt to anything but to boredom. It's the only thing that human species cannot adapt to. So we will never be able to live in a utopia for like more than a week. So it's really a nice, a nice thought that you have about utopia.
Eu fiquei muito encantada com a tua resposta sobre a questão de o quão longe se ir em busca da utopia. A minha pergunta foi também muito em função de um trabalho de uma pensadora brasileira, a Susana Albornoz, que trabalha com a questão das utopias, né? E ela usa uma frase que eu gosto muito, de que a utopia é um horizonte. Isso não quer dizer que você vai imediatamente para lá, ou que isso é o lugar perfeito, mas ele é o que nos mantém andando. Né? Eu acho que casa um pouco com a tua resposta sobre o movimento, que é um movimento em direção, talvez, né, a um bem tão especulativo quanto qualquer outra parte dessa ficção. mas parece que o nosso mal é menos especulativo que o nosso bem, né? Parece que o mal se converte em realidade mais facilmente do que os nossos bons sonhos. Então, às vezes, e essa é uma das coisas que a gente tem se perguntado, não é? Se é possível fazer uma ficção científica que imagine algo melhor e não apenas algo pior e pior e pior e pior, para que a gente tenha um horizonte para onde andar. E eu falo isso também porque eu sou formadora de professores, e uma das coisas que a gente nota pelos professores em relação às nossas crianças, aos nossos jovens, é uma descrença total em relação ao futuro. Há muito pouca vontade de construir alguma coisa, porque só se vê a decadência, só se vê o horror, só se vê o fim. Então, foi muito em função disso, assim, de se pensar que tipo de horizonte, que tipo de bandeiras, como escritores de ficção científica, a gente pode jogar para o mundo. Pouco isso.
So Nikelen said she liked your answer
Really
very much. I'm gonna give my best here.
Sorry.
That's okay. And that it made her think that her question was kind of based on something that a Brazilian writer says. What's her name, Nikelen?
Susana Albornoz.
Susana Albornoz says, which is that an utopia is like the horizon. We're not really getting there, but it's something that we can look forward to. It's something to walk towards to. So she said that as someone who works, with educating teachers, for example, she sees that right now people are only looking, at the negative, and we kind of have this general feeling that the good things, this good horizon, it kind of remains there, but bad things and I don't know, maybe it's an extreme word that I'm going to use, but evil, it manifests itself in reality much more frequently and much more easily than these good things that end up being kept in the horizon. And then as someone who works with teachers, she sees that people don't really have a good thing to walk towards, to a good horizon, that people are focusing right now on the bad things and on what's tragic and what's decadent and what's not going so well. So as writers of science fiction, that's something that we end up asking ourselves, like, can we write something positive? Can we think of a positive horizon? Can we create something that will be something to walk towards to? And that's our kind of like her thoughts on this. Nikelen, if I skipped too much, you can tell me.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm also thinking that what André just mentioned is that utopian is like my happy world or something like that, right? And which can be a dystopian for other people. So I think right now it's the pandemic also tells us a very important lesson, is that we have to learn how to coexist with other people, right, in this world. Because there's no easy solution that we just, for example, to kill all of the poor people to make a better world or something like that. If we just let this unbalanced, uneven development go on and on, no one in the world, even though the richest people can be happy, can live in their utopia world forever. So so in this way, we should just redefine what is, for example, positive
or negative for the individuals. For example, should you just try to give up some of your rights and to think about what you can, if you did what you can just give to other people, what things you can do to improve the rights of the people who need in help, to improve, like for example, the justice. So it's always the most important issue, and even more important right now. And the thing is that in this like digital world, we have a strong illusion that we just live in a very small cosmos, constituted by your, for example, network, your room, and all of this material. Yes, but your or my single happy world. It's just an illusion. And right now, I think most people will agree that it's a time for we just wake up from this illusion. Actually, it's very similar as like the Matrix, right? People just soaked in these small bubbles, this like the nursing bubble, and have a good dream. But I think this time we have to wake up from this dream and to think about like coexisting with other people, with the billions of other people in this world. And what's a meaning, what's a challenge this situation just brought to your single world, your single life. Yeah. That's just a bit of follow up feedback. Yeah.
Fantastic.
We gotta go back to our questions here, the public questions. So the next one that I have here by Priscilla Satman was in our current, pandemic issue. Do you believe that science fiction will have a new way of presenting certain issues and matters, like human relationships, health, and technology?
Yeah. First of all, I have a very simple feedback about this, like the real challenge pandemic issue brought to science fiction writing. That in just this year, after all of this happened, when I just pick up a science fiction story on, for example, the singularity, on the, like for example, super AI control of human being in the future, I have a strong feeling that this is not the real horror thing that will happen. Just several months ago, we're thinking about like the development of this civilization. We just finally bring out, for example, something like a super AI or super smart god, which is very evil and have very evil attitude to want to destroy or control over human being. But right now we think we feel we just realize that the real challenge is still human being challenge. We still have so many things haven't been resolved and haven't been thought about thoroughly, and we have to go back to some very basic questions. And so I think that's one challenge. I have a very strong feeling that, which is just bring up to science fiction writing. Yeah. So how about you? Some new way of writing, new process of writing in the future.
And then Kelly, would you like to comment something on this question? Or can we go on?
O meu olhar é um pouco complicado de pensar a questão da pandemia como escritora, porque como historiadora eu estudei pandemias, né? E E toda vez que me pedem para analisar, eu sempre digo que pode piorar. Então, eu acabo sendo péssima para pensar qualquer coisa. Há alguns anos me chamaram para comentar aquele filme Contágio, né? E estava todo mundo muito apavorado com o cenário do filme. E eu achei o filme soft. Eu achei o filme leve. Eu achei que ele não pegou pesado o suficiente. Então, a minha visão em termos de pandemia, ela é a pior possível. Eu sinto muito. Eu acabo fugindo das questões de saúde quando se trata de ficção científica por conta disso. Porque o cenário pode ser sempre pior, gente. É uma coisa horrível. Eu tenho vários vídeos falando disso, então vamos lá. Vou para os outros vídeos, deixa eu.
So Nikele said that as a historian, she feels, like she can't comment on these issues because she has studied pandemics that have happened before. And her stance is that things can always get much worse. So she was called to talk about this 2011 movie Contagion, and she thought it was very soft. People were kind of desperate, but she thought it was that's okay, but it can be much worse than that. So she'd rather not comment on these issues because her stance is that it can get worse. So she said she's not commenting on this one.
Sorry.
I'd say that maybe
I totally understand.
I'd say that maybe now that this pandemic is happening, it's not anymore a topic for science fiction. Maybe the normal literature will have to deal with it, but science fiction may move on now after this pandemic. I don't know if there will be many books about this pandemic in science fiction, maybe in common literature, because it's really a nice topic to talk about, but it's not science fiction anymore. It's reality now.
Yes.
Our next question by Yolanda Moreto. She wants to know how science fiction can help us rethink the social systems in which we live today, which I think you also commented a little bit on, but if you want to add something else. Hi.
Stuck again. So just as I mentioned that I think what is important for science fiction is not to provide any certain solution for our problem, but to give us a desire to get away from this iron cage. So the things that even so many people talk about, for example, if the prediction of one science fiction story is right or is wrong. But I think it's not important for the predictions finally to be proved right or not, or right or wrong. But what is important is that at that specific historical moment, that science fiction story let people know that things is not always like this, and things can be something other than the current situation. So that is important. So right now it's still we are still quite this kind of vision. So this is my just to conclude my answer to this kind of question. Yeah. But as I see the images are stuck again, so I'm not quite sure whether or not you hear me.
I heard.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Yes, right now it comes back.
Oh, okay. Our next question by Elton Furlaneto is this. He said that a Chinese author known here in Brazil is, I think that's how you say it, but I can spell it, Cixin Liu.
Yes.
And he wants to know if he really represents like a canon of Chinese science fiction.
Yeah, of course it must be. He is like a peak of the the history of Chinese science fiction. But of course, there used to be some peaks in the past, and I think there will be more peaks in the future. But right now, what is important is that his works make Chinese science fiction to go to the world, to be international or to be international visible. Uh, except for Cixin Liu's work, there are also many good works in China. But Cixin Liu's work is the very provides the very opportunity for Chinese science fiction to be seen, to become visible for the international world. And so I always said that all of us have to thanks to his work, and also thanks to, for example, Ken Liu and other people who contributed for the international communication and the translation of Chinese science fiction. If there's no if they didn't did this kind of work, there's no like this opportunity for me talking with all of you about, for example, science fiction, this kind of work, this kind of thing. Yeah. So, but what I want to say is that there are many other good works, and so if you like Cixin Liu, if you love Cixin Liu, but you are not fully satisfied, you're welcome to read other works, including my works. Mine is very different from his works, and the differences is always good.
Yes. Well, people are commenting here, and lots of people have read you already, and the ones who haven't are like really, really excited about reading you. So,
Thank you.
There's another question here. I'm going to try to make the other two because we have two more, but maybe we won't have time. Let's see. It was Anna wants to know how you feel about climate fiction, and if you could talk a little bit about, how that kind of fiction is being perceived in China right now.
Actually, because climate fiction became really, really hot topic, really popular in recent years, especially in, for example, the academic research area. But I think so far we did not have that so many good enough climate science fiction in China. I think due to many reasons, it's very hard to explain why something do not exist. Yeah, but I think in the future there will be more and more, because this is really like what the things we should really care about, not just because climate science fiction is a very big topic, a very big theme. It's for example, the coronavirus and other like this disaster. The disaster happens to our Earth can be all included in this area. So. So I'm very looking forward to reading more.
All right, and I think this will be our last question for today, asked by Edgar Refinetti. He said that when he reads Chinese authors, the ones that are like translated in English, he can identify a common theme, which is related to government oppression. But he didn't have the same perception in, he couldn't see that in your stories, which deal with different issues and different themes with different points of view. Do you also see this difference? And is this perception determined by American editors' choices, in what they're going to translate, or why do you think that happens?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Especially the difference between myself, my works, and other Chinese science fiction writers' works. You just mentioned. First of all, I think for example, the process of the choosing the stories to be translated by for example, the translators and the editors, publishers must be in this Chinese works translated in other languages. So, for example, The Fold in Beijing and another word I think is like a City of Silence by Ma Boyong, which is included in Ken Liu's collection. I think it's Invisible Planet. So this kind of works is very typical. This kind of dystopia works mentioning for example, the criticize to the current situation in China. But as I mentioned, there are many different kinds of works exist right now in China, and some of them have been translated, and some of them have been not. So I think, yeah, it's hard to explain or whether or not there's real this kind of differences between author to author. As most of the authors, they created different styles, different stories on different styles, different themes, and sometimes they want to try to challenge themselves. If an author just insisted in writing a single style of science fiction and for a while, and after that they may want to try to write something else. So there's also an opportunity for you to see this picked up works from a group of writers. So actually it is not I think it's not a real answer to your question, but yeah, I was thinking about that more.
But I think it's interesting to think that, because I think it's something that as Brazilians we also go through. That we have very few works, Brazilian works, translated into other languages, and people will almost always know, Machado de Assis and Clarice Lispector, and it ends up, kind of uh, giving the impression that our literature is that. So it is something that, as people who write and work with a language which is not English, we have to deal with, right? That translation and the processes involved are, there is a selection there too, and yeah.
There's
And
a
Andrea,
I,
please.
no, there's a film that came out last year by Elias Suleiman. He's a Palestine director, and the film is a comedy about himself trying to sell his movie for other countries. And when he's in Paris, in France, he tries to sell his movie to a distributor, and the man says to him, "But that movie is not such a Palestine movie, you know." People sometimes they want to reinforce the vision they already have in other countries. They don't want to know what truly are those countries. They want the stereotypes sometimes. So I like so much that scene, and the French man telling the Palestinian director that his movie is not true Palestine, is not Palestinian enough for him to buy the movie and pass on movie theaters. So I think in literature, Chinese literature and Brazilian science fiction, we all also have to confront this kind of situation to sell our culture to other places.
Yes, yes.
I said that was the last question, but we actually have another one. And the person who wrote it, Anna, who had already asked something before, she actually wrote it in Chinese in the chat. So we kind of, translated it here and there. But the thing is, she wants to know if you could recommend some works, if you could recommend some authors. And because, of course, you have already recommended Can You and yourself, but if you could maybe give us some other names to go after.
So not just the Chinese writers, right? Just the general science fiction writers. I mean, what?
She wants to know Chinese science fiction authors.
So the thing is that right now I think the only stories you can got access actually just from very specific venues. For example, Clarkesworld, they have a special column for Chinese science fiction translated in English, and also there are some other magazines and or like a web page they accept translation works. Still, the tricky thing is that most of stories have to English, and then from English at least to be known from the readers of other countries, and then the publishers may or translators may begin to make contact with the Chinese writers and say that I think your story is very good and I want to translate, for example, some of your stories, and mostly just from English into other languages. So if I want to, so things that right now there are like two collections translated by Ken Liu, Invisible Planets and Broken Stars, and two long novel, except for those things. There are two long novel. One is by Chen Jiufan, The Waste Tide. Another one is by Bao Shu, and I think the title is like The Redemption of Time. And there's also one anthology by Liu Cixin, not translated by Ken Liu, but it's a good one. It's called The Wandering Earth. So basically, these are most of the stories, the good stories, or the stories or the books you can get access in English word right now. And also I have a English anthology. No, sorry, English collection, just already translated into English, and I think it's actually kind of published.
Deu uma travadinha, mas acho que ela volta logo.
Because in the beginning of last year, and we successfully collect all the money we needed to, for example, pay for the translation and pay for me, and so after that, all the stories have already been translated into English, and I think the participants of this campaign, they can already get the e-version of this book. But it's hard to say when we can get the printed paperback, because of the delay of the whole publication system right now. But that's one is a summer beyond our reach stories. So you can try to follow up with that one and see if that will appear, for example, on Amazon, and you can buy one.
All right, I think this will be it. I'm so happy with how this conversation turned out. And I'm going to, give some messages in Portuguese now before we stop broadcasting. But thank you so much, Xia. Thank you, Nikelen. Thank you, André. Stay connected. And I'm just going to give some messages here in Portuguese. Gente, Muito, muito obrigada quem ficou com a gente esse tempo todo. A mesa mais longa do Relampeio até agora. Que conversa rica e incrível. Eu queria, antes de a gente desconectar aqui, lembrar todo mundo que hoje a gente está, então, promovendo, né, dentro da nossa proposta, de sempre pensar na questão de que o momento histórico que estamos vivendo é intrinsecamente ligado a uma situação, infelizmente, muito ruim, para doar, então, para o projeto Sobrevivendo ao Corona, de São Paulo, que está tentando levar mantimentos para famílias, né, em situação de vulnerabilidade, famílias principalmente da periferia de São Paulo, e que certamente é uma coisa incrível que a gente pode fazer, né? É uma coisa até meio de ficção científica que a gente pode ir lá e botar no PicPay @sobrevivendo ao corona e sai dinheiro da nossa conta e ele vai virar algo que vai ajudar alguém, né? A gente tem que entender que a gente está aqui podendo ter essa conversa e, infelizmente, não é todo mundo que tem o privilégio de ter a internet, luz, comidas, todas essas coisas que para nós são tão básicas, garantidas, né? Seria bastante feliz se a gente pudesse ter isso. Então, eu queria agradecer novamente, agora em português, a Nikelen e o André, nossos mediadores, trouxeram perguntas incríveis, a Xia, maravilhosa, nossa convidada, e acho que, então, por hoje é isso. Muito, muito obrigada a todo mundo que nos acompanhou nessa conversa muito maravilhosa. E o nosso Tech Wizard, Thiago Lee, vai nos conectar logo, eu suponho. Enquanto ele não faz isso, eu vou também agradecer os nossos tradutores de hoje, a Deborah e o Renan Bernardo, fazendo um trabalho belíssimo nos comentários de tradução simultânea, para, né, a gente conseguir dar acesso a mais e mais pessoas. E lembrando que hoje, então, a gente começa cedinho, começamos à 1h da tarde, uma mesa com o Thomas Older, autor de Rex, que saiu pela Dark Side aqui, com as maravilhosas Carol Kiovato e Anne Kiangala, lindas, preciosas. Essa mesa vai estar incrível, vai certamente estar muito, muito incrível.